Welcome everyone. Speaking today on the topic of Plato on music is Gabriela Kurylewicz, a Polish philosopher and a musician as well, who has written an incredibly good book on Pico della Mirandola and his relation to Platonism and Neoplatonism, and who also teaches seminars both for the University of Warsaw and up until very recently for a university for, can I give a translation? Or
Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński.
Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński.
Yeah.
University.
We call it Oxford.
Oxford,
this
that's
is Oxford
right.
and this is Oxford. Because this is Uka as wood and some vicious people, but with a sense of humor, say Oxford. But Oxford is different to Oxford, I say.
And Gabriela has come almost especially to England from Poland to give this seminar, especially to give this seminar for us. So please give her a warm welcome, and we'll proceed.
Well, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah. My name is Gabriela Kurylewicz. I'm really touched that I'm invited here for that special evening seminar. I think evenings are the best times for seminars. I run my seminar on Tuesdays. This is 6:30, but no wine. So my aim is to speak about music in Plato. So just to start the topic music according to Plato, I would like to share with you with some maybe foundations or assumptions. Our thought always is somehow prejudiced. We cannot start from zero. It's impossible. So I think I just assume that metaphysical philosophy and music are connected by a special relationship from their old and high origin. Plato named writing fables and stories popular music, musicae de modes, whereas philosophy he called the absolute, greatest music, megiste musicae. And this we can find in Phaedo's prologue. We'll come back to that fragment, but just to mention. Evidently, Plato meant by this philosophy based on the theory of transcendent ideas, a first philosophy, which can be called metaphysics. The relationship between metaphysical philosophy and music relies on their mutual resemblance in regard to reality. Metaphysics is the art of approaching the possible knowledge of the principles of all existing things, and in its essence, it is an investigation of being. Music is the art of searching for numeral proportions by which the causes of reality in its entirety, and among them the principles of being, the deepest source of all things, express themselves. Music, in her three at least fundamental meanings, which I will explain to you in a moment, as discovered by Plato, music as an important domain of intellectual knowledge for ages progressed in its true relationship with the development of the metaphysics of being. I assume that times of great philosophers of being are also times of great music, and times of reduction of philosophy are times of reduction and fading of music. I assume that as long as the world exists, and as long as intellectual and open-minded people live on this world, there still exists metaphysical philosophy and exists music. Presence of music and metaphysics may be better or worse, more or less evident, but it cannot be suppressed and distracted utterly. Yes, so I don't want to make any demagogy on you. However, my considerations start from Plato, his metaphysics, theory of ideas, and theory of music. That is his philosophy of music. Plato discovered the theory of ideas, the theory of reality of transcendent first causes or principles or forms of all things. Physical, intellectual, possible, and real. He found the theory of the four causes. He built the theory of human and divine art, the principles of which are irony, dialectics, and all completing spiritual love. He constructed the theory of music in her three main dimensions. A, as humanly performed vocal and instrumental music and poetry. B, as a whole of arts understood as a special service for muses and the divine, which is the source of all music. C, as a sum of the principles or laws essential for all kinds of divine creativity and also for human thoughts and works, which exist only because they take part in the divine. For Plato, philosophy means love of wisdom, human love of divine wisdom, friendship with wisdom, friendship with ideas, and the greatest music. Plato designed for man, for human beings, the three most blessed ways to the transcendent ideas of goodness, truth, beauty, unity, and being, the ideas which are the real causes of making and knowing things, the way of love, the way of music, and the way of philosophy. That thought can be found in Phaedrus. We come to that fragment in a moment. Well, we can see that in search of this project, we should run through all the dialogues of Plato and his letters. And maybe we should spend some time on Boethius, who not only made that beautiful prosodium Constellation of Philosophy, which is quite a remarkable philosophical work too. I did a Polish translation of that thing, and while doing it, I just discovered the depth and the courage of the project, because Boethius is not mentioning God even with one word in Consolatio. However, he shows a sort of Platonism, very much Christian. This is what we say, we audience. But he does it with a way. His plan is to show that it is possible to build a sort of metaphysics and theory of art based on Platonic, Aristotelian, also Stoic tradition, without and getting quite close to Christianity without help of revelation. Of course, he's not saying that revelation has no value, but he only shows what Thomas Aquinas later on taught us, that some most important theological matters can be discovered by philosophical tools, and what is more, a field of theology may be so difficult for some humans that sometimes we may feel that the best theologian is devil, not a human being, because he had that knowledge of things he may not share, but has the knowledge. So what I wanted to say, that Boethius followed the very Socratean path of questioning things, and he actually transported the greatest themes and the terms of Platonic, Aristotelian, and Stoic philosophy from the Greek language into Latin language, and what is very important for us, he just thought that he is only explaining what Plato did, and we know that Boethius established a new way of modern Western music foundations. We know that he arranged that wide, broad sense of music, covering human music, which means instrumental and vocal, musica humana, musica mundana, which is the music not harmony, because this is more than harmony, of the universe. And also he proposed a term of musica divina. Of course, believing that everything he said he found in Plato. Because Plato is quite a rich writer, that's true, and we can find maybe not everything, but quite a lot in his great dialogues and letters. So, but maybe Mikołaj, once you invite me here to speak again on Boethius, but today or on Thomas Aquinas, why not? Today our aim is to talk on Plato. So my intention is to investigate, study, and consider a mystery. A mystery which is in Boethius's case so strong, because some people think that Boethius just misunderstood Plato, and this is why we have our modern music, and then polyphonic music, and then this is why we received our freedom in music. And some people, some scholars say that Boethius understood Plato, and he translated his deepest thoughts and terms and desires, and presented to the Western world. So my considerations today start with the fragment from Plato's Phaedo, especially from the confession where Socrates apologizes for what he was doing in his life, what he was not, and why. We call this fragment prologue, because this is 61a, 61e. I'll make this quotation because I'm sure you forgot some little things. I also could have forgotten, that's why we need it. Here Cabes joined in and said, "Goodness, yes, Socrates, thank you for your reminding me. Several people, including Avenus, just the other day have been asking me about the poems you've made up, putting the tales of Aesop into verse, and the hymn to Apollo. What have you in mind, they asked, in making them up after you'd come here, when you'd never made up anything before? So, if you would like me to have an answer for Avenus when he asks me again, and I'm quite sure he will, tell me what I should say." "Tell him the truth, then," Socrates said. "Tell the truth. This is most important. I made them not because I wanted to compete with him or with his verses. I knew that wouldn't be easy, but because I was trying to find out the meaning of certain dreams and fulfill a sacred duty, in case perhaps it was that kind of music, musicae, that they were ordering me to make. They were like this, you see. Often in my past life the same dream had visited me, now in one guise, now in another, but always saying the same thing. Socrates, it said, make music and practice it. Now, in earlier times, I used to assume that the dream was urging and telling me to do exactly what I was doing, as people shout encouragement to runners. So the dream was urging and telling me to do the very thing I was doing, to make music, since philosophy is very high music form. And that was what I was making. But now that the trial was over and the festival of the god was preventing my death, I thought that in case it was music in the popular sense, musique démodée, that the dream was commanding me to make, I ought not to disobey it, but should make it, as it was safer not to go off before I'd fulfilled a sacred duty, by making verses and thus obeying the dream. And so I first made them for the god in whose honor the present feast was kept. Then, after addressing the god, I reflected that a poet should, if he were really going to be a poet, make tales rather than true stories. And being no teller of tales myself, I therefore used some I had ready to hand. I knew the tales of Aesop by heart and made verses of the first of those I came across. So give Evenus this message. Cebes, say goodbye, and tell him, if he's sensible, to come after me as quickly as he can. I am off today, it seems, by Athenians' orders. End of quotation. In a translation by David Gallup. However, where he uses word art in Plato is musique. That's why I dare to corrupt it. But in purpose. I will interpret this fragment in relation to other fragments where Plato is talking about music, musique, philosophy, and religion. While Plato is the author, Socrates is the focus and soul of his writings. He plays the deep and intimate role which is shaping the Platonic dialogue from within. Socrates was Plato's most important teacher and his strongest inspiration. For my purpose, I believe in the true presence of Socrates in Plato's dialogues throughout all periods of his writing and thought. In Plato's vision, Socrates is the greatest philosopher and the only true artist. And if he is an artist, it means he is a musician in the fullest sense of what is and what can be music, according to Plato. What I call music or Platonic music or music according to Plato, I should perhaps preserve in its original sound, musique. But my intention is to show that the English term music, like Polish muzyka, comes from the Latin term musica, and that the latter from the Greek word musike. I do believe that our sense of music may be far from its origin, but still not totally disconnected. So, while discussing the Platonic theory of musique and his version of Socrates' o musikos, I make a deliberate choice to apply the phrases music, Platonic music, and Socrates the musician. This way, possibly, some of our modern words concerning music may become deepened by their ancient Platonic meaning. My intention is to see the term music as rich and deep as a well in the mountains where the meaning can still be taken from mysterious underground. Music according to Plato. To the point. For Plato, music, musique, in its broad sense, means the whole of intellectual culture, the aim of which are mental health, that is why music is medicine, education, paideia, and the knowledge and love of the idea of beauty, philokalia. Socrates says in the Republic 403c, I quote, "The aim of music, musique, is to teach us to love what is beautiful." This knowledge and love covers all arts, and philosophy, and given that we can fully understand its sense, it may be called the theory of harmony, at least. Plato identifies so many special and crucial fields with music because he believes that music has the strongest influence on the human soul. Socrates says in the Republic 401d 402a, I quote, after Andrew Barker's translation, "Isn't training in music, musicae, of overriding importance, because rhythmoi and harmoniae, that is patterns of order exhibited by movement and melody, go most deeply into the recesses of the soul and take a powerful hold on it, bringing grace, fullness, and making a man graceful if he is correctly trained, but the opposite if he is not. Another reason is that the man who has been properly trained in these matters would perceive most sharply things that were defective and badly crafted or badly grown, and his displeasure would be justified. He would praise and rejoice in fine things, and would receive them into his soul and be nourished by them, becoming fine and good." For Plato, music in its strongest sense is free from flat pictures, eidola, and consists of the progression of words and notions, logoi, of sequences of sounds and thoughts, meloi, and the sets of sounds and proportions, harmoniae and rhythmoi. It is a service to the muses, to all, some, or one of them. In this meaning, separate disciplines of art that deal with words and sounds, epos, lyrical poetry, tragedy, comedy, etc., are music. Further, music can develop into philosophy. That is possible because philosophy is music when it is metaphysical and searching for transcendent ideas, and as Socrates says in Philebus, it becomes, I quote, evidence of desires which the muse of philosophy initiates, converting us to the realm of intuition and thought. It's just in the end of the dialogues, 67b. The principle of music, understood in such a way, is a really true opinion and connected with certainty of what is beautiful, just, good, and what is not, being opposite to them. This principle is shown in Politicus 309c. The Socrates of Plato makes music full of inner irony and simplicity of thought, which is wiser and stronger than nihilistic irony. What drives him to make music is his feeling of discomfort, his dream that is filled with intriguing voices, his eagerness to try what the voices import, and a feeling of duty constantly returning with words. Socrates, make music, do it. Finally, there is the fear of the god, Socrates says in that quote I read in the beginning. It is safer not to go off before I fulfill a sacred duty, by making verses and thus obeying the dream. This seems to be the psychological gateway to music, but music must first begin somewhere else, and Socrates is trying to go further in his investigation, further in the search to real causes of things which belong to music. It is possible because there is an inner music in the human individual soul, and its own rhythm, rhythmos, and harmony, harmonia. Socrates discovers this in Phaedo, the dialogue written by Plato reporting a real conversation and drama which took place between Socrates and his closest friends in the very last moments before his death. Socrates, when talking, discovers a harmony in his soul and a place for even more harmony there. And he tries to communicate his special vision and theory to those who are with him then. Metaphorically speaking, at first Socrates is not eager to write at all. Then, when he does write, he writes not. He does not want to write on physical materials which come and go, but on the souls of other people, or at least in the soul of one sensitive listener. And that way Socrates is setting his sights, reminding himself and other participants of reality, of what they know and long for, the true being of transcendent ideas. The way of music that Socrates is following is parallel to the way of love and way of philosophy, so he cannot stop movement and search for the perfect reality of ideas that once started may be endless. He cannot stop trying to get other people involved, especially those who like to talk with him. Very strikingly, he seems to be a helmsman, Kybernetes. Travelers are people who talk and listen to him. His words are the ship. The way he talks and argues is the way he navigates. I wonder what is the sea, but maybe we'll find it later on. The great concern of Plato, Socrates' listener and student, is that our thoughts need words. Words need to be recorded, so people can better read them and interpret and remember. One can record thoughts and stories. A story or thought writer is called mythologikos. Similarly, one can speak through oneself or through others, talking both ways and from himself is exactly what Socrates is doing. Talking from oneself as kalos logos, and inspired music under all necessary conditions, is the true art which has the power to shape souls intellectually and spiritually. It looks easy because it originates from oneself, but it is difficult because it develops by trial and error, and also because there was only one such artist, Socrates, somebody who, being in prison and awaiting sentences, wrote fables. Boethius was trying to do the same because he wrote Consolation, which is like a fable where in a prison, and not even having his disciples around him. So no, solitude. At the heart of Plato's considerations on music and philosophy is his assumption that the greatest music which people can do is philosophy. It is philosophy because it is philosophy focused on real being, the idea of being, which is perfect, divine, and transcendent, and yet somehow connected with us. This we read in Phaedo 61a. There are good reasons to call this philosophy metaphysical. Thanks to Plato, we received the two meanings of art, divine and human. Divine art brings something from not being into being. Not being is for Plato that which is undefined and aimless, apeiron, or which is every other being in relation to that we have in mind. The spiritual principle of goodness, or the idea of goodness, is the final cause of the generation of beings in the physical or sensual world, cosmos physicos, and also for the production of the forms in the intellectual world, cosmos noetos. All this Plato describes in my beloved Dialogues Sophist. That's a long section, 265-68. You'll find this division of art in divine and natural, and so on. And then the sophist disappears in the end. From sophist, the liar. From this point of view, art, techne, is previous to nature, physis. It is a necessary precondition for it. We read it in the laws, 892ac. That previous means not chronologically, but in the hierarchy of being. Like a father is previous to his daughter. but or somebody better is previous to somebody worse on some fields. So it's a priority of value. Yeah. So human art or creativity comes about via process of, I should use that word, imitation or following, or more precisely by creative following, mimesis, of the highest things one can think of. Human art, the art in the capacity of human skills and understanding, preserves something from the duality of the divine art, because man is producing his art on the horizon of both the visible, physical, and intellectual, spiritual worlds. Imitation of opinions, doxomimetike, is totally engaged in the physical world and does not extend any further. It stays on the level of sophistike. Doxomimetike, yeah? It stays on the level of art of sophistry. That is the art of giving answers. The higher and wiser form of imitation and following is the art that comes from the intellectual principle of harmony, or more, musike, which by means of logoi, meloi, rhythmoi, I quote, turns itself to the realm of intuition and thought, and proceeds on the road parallel to that of philosophy and the love of beauty. Sometimes risking that orientation, that further orientation towards the transcendent things, in the same time reducing our ability and capacity of giving answers is quite valuable. But as long as we can keep giving answers, we should. But we shouldn't feel ashamed, or we should feel ashamed and feel not bad when we stop and cannot continue giving answers and start to receive something special, and not unintellectual. Plato is not at all against logos. He is a great lover of logos. So that longer project, that further project of art and philosophy, Plato calls music in Phaedrus 248b. Sometimes he divides it in two kinds: popular music, musica de mode, and absolute music, megiste musicae. In Chalcidius's translation, it is put in Latin, megiste musicae, musica maxima. How good! So, because popular music and absolute music have different ranges and effectiveness, but they belong to the same music line. Absolute music comparable with kalos logos panharmonion. I don't know how to translate it very well. One should write a long book about kalos logos panharmonion. Well, maybe today we try to make a first step in this translation. Leads to the poor, or maybe not poor, powerful, the opposite, idea of beauty. Being born from the intellectual principle of harmony, absolute music transgresses the particular, accidental and opinionated scale of fairness. It reaches the beauty which is immense, real, one, and true. As Socrates says in Symposium 110d, and now we have the answer, what is the sea? It leads you to the open sea of beauty. Now we come to the point, Socrates, the musician. Can we call Socrates that way? In the given context of Plato's thought, the very secret of human art is encapsulated in the three facts. First, Plato burned his early poems. Secondly, things which cannot be put in words, which is the theory of ideas, of course, he did put in the words of the dialogues. And third, the only authentic artist he recognized was Socrates. The Platonic theory of ideas justifies reality or actuality, and truthfulness of beauty as transcendent being, something beyond all the categories. Human will and intellect, psyche, knows the similar by the similar, and the intensity of being and the perfection of effectiveness depend on the stage of participation in divine wisdom, and also on the stage of participation in love overcoming irony. Given all this, one can say that there is truly a music of ideas. Working with the knowledge of what is and what is not, of truth and falsehood, and with knowledge of his own way, the artist or musician moves towards the music of ideas. Thus, for Plato, music means more than harmony. Harmony as a dynamic consonance is only a part of music understood as kalos logos, beautiful mind, beautiful word, beautiful reason. All these things are put in Greek two words, kalos logos. Harmony is the first agent, then integrity or unity the second, hygeia, and the clarity or spiritual power the third. When summed up, these three give rise to such a music which is the center of Plato's interest. Socrates is a musician searching for music and involving others in his work for metaphysical philosophy and music. Socrates' music involves his contemplation of ideas, theoria, and communicating his passion and understanding of ideas further by translating the meaning of contemplation, eidos pathos, into the very meaning of action, eidos ethos. It is always played by him with special care so that action, over against all the difficulties, could refer back to contemplation. Contemplation must be the source and root of action, according to the transcendent ideas. Music represents Socrates' longing for completeness, because it offers unity in both, contemplation and action in one nutshell. Sometimes Plato calls Socrates the musician, musikos, sometimes he calls him the magician, goetes. Conclusions? Let's try. First, translation from Barker. Allusions to music, very dry conclusion. Allusions to music can be found throughout Plato's works. Allusions. Some are casually historical, the majority are closely linked with the structure of his philosophical thought. Broadly speaking, they fall into three groups. The first concerns the role of music in moral education and includes, beside Plato's own recommendations, many illuminating references to the corrupt music of the time. The second, which is closely connected with the work of contemporary Pythagoreans, deals with the abstract analysis of musical structures and sets out a program for harmonics as a mathematical science. The third provides the link between the two, relating mathematically specifiable harmonic structures to the constitution of the human soul and to that of the universe at large. What Andrew Barker says is true, and his translations of the Platonic writings are most appropriate. I would like to try, however, to continue to the end with some further suggestions. For Plato, music, musike, is a whole process of human education and learning. a way of human upbringing and growing. Music is a human instrument and a method and a way to know what is true and real and divine. The aim of music, within the capacity of human will and intellect or understanding, is love of beauty. Philokalia. Pathways of human music are both theoretical and practical, abstract and experimental. Finally, music as seen and conceived and practiced by Socrates, the Platonic musician, is his constantly repeated attempt to harmonize and communicate with the transcendent ideas directly, and with the thoughts of other people's souls directly via words, melodies, harmonies, rhythms, emotions, and real actions. Socrates' music is his goodwill to create forms of direct and personal communication in philosophy, arts, and widely understood intellectual culture, given that they all meet for a common aim, spiritual knowledge and wisdom. Socrates' music is his talking, listening, questioning, judging, his irony, his illumination, and prayer, even such as in the end of the dialogue Phaedrus, 279c. Dear Pan and other gods who inhabit here, grant I may become beautiful within, and that which is outwards in me serve that which is inwards. May I consider the wise man as rich, and allow me no more wealth than a man of moderation can bear and endure. Do we need anything more, Phaedrus? Thank you.